Hello friends and welcome to today's video. My name is Shay Madeline and today I will be showing you some art pieces I gave up and exactly why I gave up on these projects in the first place. So similar to my other videos on this channel, I'm going to try and keep the art pieces in this video pretty chronological just so that it makes sense if you see like the skill level I have in one project versus the skill I have in another project. But this first one is a piece of fan art that I attempted to make for the gaming industry or gaming company of Little Nightmares, especially Little Nightmares 2, because I really like those games, especially 1 and 2. Little Nightmares 3 is okay, but the second one is by far my favorite, so I really wanted to make a piece of fan art for it. But unfortunately, I really dropped the ball with this one and didn't quite know how to go about it, and you'll see exactly what I mean. So if you're watching the time lapse, you'll see I'm already moving on to the line art of this drawing and like finalizing all of that, which in my opinion is where my mistake first started. Because I really don't have that good of a sketch to base my line art off of. I have some blobs in the background which are supposed to be like skyscrapers and tall buildings that are far away. And then I have these blocks all around, which are also supposed to be buildings, as well as that thing in the middle. And the idea is that all the buildings are kind of leaning in menacingly towards the character Mono, because that kind of happens like in the video game, especially that tower or that building in the middle. But I really didn't know how to execute this as I have mentioned, I struggle with drawing anything that is architectural, and I really struggled with like the perspective on this drawing. So it really quickly starts looking very amateur and looking just poorly done in general. So even now, like I probably could have done something to save this, but I just thought that this drawing was so ugly and pretty soon already I'm gonna give up on it. Which you will see, I do kind of stick with this drawing longer than I maybe even should have because I thought maybe if I got to like the rendering stage of the drawing, I would really start to enjoy the process and enjoy how it was looking. But I wasn't even quite sure how to do the windows because they look really wonky, especially on that tower that's like leaning in from really far away. So you see, like I did these lighting things which look really weird, and then I tried making it look like it was raining, but I think that also looks pretty weird. I think I would still be interested in maybe redrawing this piece or even just doing something completely different, but just some sort of fan art for Little Nightmares, especially Little Nightmares 2, but this is definitely not the piece I was going for. I didn't really have any good references, and I think that's part of the issue. And I was also like using a lot of brushes that I never really use when I use Procreate. And I feel like that just made like the sidewalks, for example, look really muddy, and like the light brushes are sometimes okay to do light or like lighting features, but I think in this case it was a poor use of them as it is kind of meant to look like a spotlight, but overall I just think it looks crummy. So this is basically the finished piece, or at least where I stopped before I gave up. So this is my first drawing. Now, this next drawing arguably is actually kind of a decent drawing, or at least I think it turned out pretty okay for as far as I got it before I kind of gave up on it. I wanted to do a D&D or like fantasy style drawing. Specifically, I wanted to draw a drow, which is like a race from a lot of fantasy worlds and fantasy games because I have been playing a drow in a Baldur's Gate playthrough that I'm doing, if you know that game. And I found a cool reference that I wanted to use that kind of had like a scythe as a weapon. So I started drawing, and for a while it looked kind of ugly, but I persisted for a long time with this drawing, which is kind of why I'm a little bit disappointed that I kind of gave up on it. Maybe arguably too early, but also arguably I kind of got it to a point where it felt okay to put it aside and be done with it because I got a lot of skill out of it, regardless of maybe whether or not I completed it. Now, I gave her the scythe like I was talking about before, and then I wanted to give her some spiky, scary armor because drow kind of tend to be slightly scarier races to deal with. And I kind of got lazy because I gave her like these spiky shoulder blade things, and then on her elbow she has a piece of armor, and then around her wrist. And then I guess around her like bust as well, I have some stuff going on. But her sleeves kind of just look like she's wearing a tight, long sleeve t-shirt, which I think is kind of lazy. But if you look, I think she looks pretty good. At least I think the sketch in general is pretty good, if not a little bit lazy. So overall, the sketch I would say was a success. But then I kept going, and for this piece, I wanted to do kind of like a monochromatic or like just like a smaller color theme. So I used only cool colors, which is why she has like a blue background. I moved her scythe around a little bit to try and make that look a little bit better because it is a very bendy scythe. Even at the end, it still kind of looks a little bit funky. But here you see I'm going through and I'm giving her purple skin because I think that's kind of cool. And then green is another cool color, so I wanted to use some of that in the drawing. But then I ended up switching that to like a lighter blue because I thought that looked a little bit better. And I knew I wanted something to pop. So at first it was going to be her hair, but then I ended up making that more of like a pinky purple instead. But then her eye is what I decided to make pop because I thought they made her look kind of intimidating. And then I spent some time giving her this like magic spell, which I think is really pretty, and I might even reuse that exact type of like look to do another spell someday. And at this point, you might be wondering why would I give up? Because she looks pretty good, at least in my opinion. But as you can see now, I started messing around with the line art because I wanted to go for a lineless look, but I didn't do enough prep to make that like a seamless and smooth transition from having lines and not having lines. So now it's just really messy, and I don't think I have it in me to go back and clean up all the color blocking I did. I think if I were just to turn the lines back on, I probably could even call it a complete piece, but this is where I ended up leaving it. Of all the pieces I'll put in this video, it probably is my favorite and then maybe one I would consider redoing or even just finishing. But still, it's not up to the standard I have for my own art nowadays. So moving on, this next drawing is very, very short and there's not much to say about it. I wanted to make a design that I could have maybe printed out and put up around the house for decoration for Halloween. So I started drawing this like funky housing neighborhood situation, and I was gonna have little like ghosts flying out of the windows. But I got bored with this really, really quickly, and I tried using an art style like of watercolor, which I never really use in digital art, so I kind of gave up right here, and this is where I left it. And now you will see the final drawing that I gave up on and felt like it was worth showing to you guys. This one is, believe it or not, another architectural type piece. It was originally supposed to be like a fantasy type world where there's like bridges going across the space between like two buildings. Like imagine like a very vertical city and it's kind of all run down, but like there's bridges to connect all these tall buildings and whatnot. That was kind of what I was going for. I don't really know exactly what that would be. Maybe like a steampunk type city. And I was really excited about it, like many other pieces I'll start and then not finish. But then I very quickly decided that I did not like how it was turning out. So I got to this point basically where I started going in and filling in all the colors. And then I started warping the image to try to make the bridges make more sense. But overall, I think that made it quite a bit worse. And I struggle with perspective and architecture, like I said previously. And this is just another example of that ruining a piece for me personally. So overall, a fun idea, but just something I couldn't really execute at this point in time. But yeah, like I said, that was my last piece for today. I really hope you enjoyed this video despite it being a little bit shorter than some of my others. And if you're interested in hearing more from me, please consider subscribing. Thank you and bye-bye.